And I wanted to start with thanking DaCosta Jenkins, Jolene Thompson, Coleman Smoke, Lane Birmingham, and the rest of the executive committee and the board of directors. I also want to thank the APPA staff. This has been an interesting and challenging several months. I've been on staff about almost 5 months now, and we've certainly faced some challenges, but we will continue to persevere, as I know our public power members will as well. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to speak to you as part of a national conversation we must be having around racism, discrimination, and justice. The recent deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor are shocking and sad reminders that while we have made progress, much more work needs to be done to protect the rights and freedoms of Black Americans. While justice and equal opportunity may be our ideals, they are not yet our reality. We must promote positive change, all of us. My husband and I have had several conversations with our girls over the last week to try to better convey the inhumanity of racism in light of recent events. This is not the first time we have discussed these issues, but it is the first time we have been so direct about the responsibility we all bear to correct these injustices. As we all seek to address these issues in our personal lives, I also want to promote positive change in our industry. As an industry, we must be committed to improving diversity at every level. We are stronger when we have more diverse people, backgrounds, and ideas. For APPA, we will continue to build upon a commitment we made to diversity and inclusion in our strategic planning years ago. We will strengthen and renew this commitment by conducting training for all staff. Our membership and our board are to be commended for making it clear this is important to them. For us, it is a top priority. We choose to be an organization that encourages constructive dialogue while fostering a culture of acceptance, respect, and tolerance. And further, we will continue to review internal policies to make sure they are adequate and appropriately enforced. We must take a stand and be proactive to do our part toward eliminating racism and hatred. I know we can do better as an industry, and that is our commitment today, tomorrow, and however long it takes to achieve real equality. We are better together as public power, as an industry, and as a country. I am very proud to be back home at APPA. I saw many of your faces at the legislative rally, what seems like almost, an eon ago, but just at the end of February. And I worked with many of you during my previous tenure, and I really look forward to meeting more of you now and in the years ahead as we hopefully eventually move back to in-person meetings. But for now, please feel free to call me or email me at any time while we're in a virtual environment, and I very much look forward to it. As you heard from DaCosta, I spent my previous 4 years as CEO of the Utilities Technology Council, whose members include a mix of public power utilities, investor-owned utilities, and rural electric cooperatives, focused on information and communications technology issues in the electric sector. I learned a lot about these key issues at UTC and the shared challenges all utilities face in an increasingly complex industry, and I bring that knowledge back to APPA. Before I turn to the rest of my remarks, and since I can't be there in person, I thought it might be helpful to relay a bit of my personal background and interests. This first slide that you'll see reflects my childhood. My hobby is on the left. I am an avid horseback rider and have been since early days. I probably started riding horses at age 5, but my mother says that as soon as I started talking, I talked about owning a horse. And probably about 10 years ago when I was in my late 30s, my mom said, I guess you're not giving up that horseback riding thing, are you? So no, I'm not. I still do it in the small amount of time I have to myself, and it's something I love dearly. That is my horse Maggie, who actually has since passed away, but I love that picture. I have her daughter Ginny, and actually I was pregnant with my first daughter Emma at the same time as my horse Maggie was pregnant with Ginny. The other photos are my other loves, my family, obviously my husband, Alan Hill, my daughter's Emma, who's 12 now, and Charlotte, who's 8. And that's us at on the far right at an event just this last Christmas, like a ice event. So that was great. And then in the middle is a depiction of me in a Japanese kimono. My dad was in the Marine Corps, and we moved around quite a bit growing up, including living in Japan a couple of times. Once when I was young, which this picture shows, and then another time when I was in 3rd grade for the entire year. So that really actually also influences quite a bit how I think about life. And I did get to see quite a bit of the world and of the country when I was very young. And then the second slide depicts a couple of snapshots from my professional life. So I graduated from Vanderbilt University as a history major in 1993, and I came here to DC right after that. And I started working on Capitol Hill. And one of these pictures depicts me outside of a Capitol Hill office when I worked for Congressman Don Sherwood in Pennsylvania. And I'm there with my since passed away grandmother, Eunice Logan. Standing in front of the office there. Okay. And then the other picture, and I think someone actually has their, I'm going to stop here because I'm hearing someone talking over me a little bit. So I think if you guys could remind yourselves to put yourself on mute, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. So this other picture that's on the right is where we're going to have a little bit of fun. It's a celebration of one of the staff leaving APPA circa maybe 2003. It was taken at APPA's old offices at 2301 M Street in Washington, D.C. And here's where the fun is. There will be prizes given to anyone who can name all 4 of the APPA staff other than me in the picture. If you type in your response in the chat feature, you have until noon to do so. And there's a bonus if you know the staff's name and their titles, or at least what they did at APPA, not their exact title, but what they did. So have a little fun with that. You have a few minutes to, and if you need to take a snapshot of the picture on your screen, please do so. But in all seriousness, I believe so strongly in the work we do here at APPA and that you do on behalf of your customers and communities. And I do feel like my life is kind of leading up to representing public power because it reminds me of the public service my dad performed in the military in many ways. It's essential to our way of life, economy, and overall well-being. And the fact that we do it at a not-for-profit basis in our communities is really just the icing on the cake and really amazing. So as good as it feels to be back, I did not anticipate the first few months of my role focusing on a pandemic response. I don't think anyone would. But I did know actually about such high impact, low frequency events being a possibility. And I knew that our members understood that possibility, as did key APPA staff, because they had actually had pandemic plans put in place and maybe had not been able to really fully appreciate what it meant. But I know that we had focused on some of these types of events. And so that was helpful knowing that. Navigating through this crisis at the start of my tenure as CEO, also just made clear that the team at APPA has strong and diverse talents and also emphasized the strengths of you, our members, and our shared community. As an association and an industry, we've fared through many crises affecting our country. DaCosta mentioned some of these, but storms and other natural disasters, recessions, depressions, 9/11. There's also been crises specific to our industry. In my personal experience, my initial tenure at APPA started in early 2001 at the height of the Western electricity crisis, followed by 9/11 that September, then a couple of years later, the 2003 blackout. Maybe that's simply the nature of our work, because immediately after we were formed 80 years ago in 1940, we were in crisis mode. The founding meeting in September 1940 was a subset of a government-sponsored meeting about national defense and to ensure the US had enough electricity supply for potential wartime purposes. The US and the world was in majorly uncertain times, yet the need for public power utilities throughout the country to face these events together was never more certain. One of our first leaders, Carlton Now, led the association on evenings and weekends and served in the Navy during the day. And many other public power leaders and members of the board balanced military and public power utility duties. For example, APPA's first leaders worked to build the association with wartime efforts such as helping public power members obtain wire, cables, and other materials that were scarce during wartime. Our utility members focused on ensuring the power flow to the factories, aluminum smelters, mines, docks, and other infrastructure that enabled us to eventually win the war. Public power utilities underpinned many crucial wartime industries and supply lines in places like Los Angeles, Washington State, and the Tennessee Valley, among many others. As a history major in college, as I mentioned earlier, there's no doubt in my mind that the sheer industrial strength of the US was a key, if not the key factor in winning World War II. That industrial might was underpinned and underscored by our members' reliable and low-cost power and many of these critical domestic locations. As the US recovered from World War II and the states became more interconnected, the power industry also began to build on economies of scale and a wholesale power supply. In 1958, Leland Olds, then chairman of the Federal Power Commission, the precursor to the FERC, urged public power and rural electric cooperatives to set up joint ownership agencies within their states for the purpose of wholesale power supply, as he envisioned a future where regional organizations would manage the wholesale power supply for all distribution systems nationwide. And he didn't want smaller systems to be, quote, squeezed out of the picture. With APPA also promoting the idea, many joint action agencies formed throughout the 1960s and 1970s, the creation of which often involves significant battles within state legislatures. Today, joint action continues to be a strong example of how public power collaboration allows many utilities to maintain a reliable, affordable power supply. There are now close to 60 joint action agencies in the country. Then, as now, our industry has balanced responding to crises and changing industry trends with maintaining regular operations. Then and now, we face decisions about what constitutes critical infrastructure and essential personnel. This has certainly been an issue as we have helped our members respond to COVID-19. In the operational arena, APPA has been engaging across the industry, particularly with the Electricity Subsector Coordinating Council. As its name implies, it's a coordination avenue for us, our investor-owned utility, and rural electric cooperative colleagues to get together around resilience and response issues with the federal government, Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, the White House, the FBI. So we have collaborated heavily, as you heard from Undersecretary Menzies earlier, around what were the needs that we could help our members with at the federal level and help float down to the state level and to their communities. We identified several areas. We formed initially out of the gate in March, we formed a Tiger team that then had sub-teams where we focused on things like control center continuity, accessing personal protective equipment and testing, ensuring communications continuity, access to quarantine areas, and then responsible reentry and issues like contact tracing have come up in recent weeks. We developed a resource guide as the industry through the ESCC that has been updated 8 times just since March as issues have developed and as we have better responded to this pandemic. There were 84 public power participants that were volunteers as part of these Tiger team efforts. And if you're one of them, thank you so much for your help. If you are a CEO who allowed your staff to participate and to take time away from their day jobs to help, I just want to thank you as well. We really had a disproportionate amount of participation in this pandemic response in terms of our federal government response vis-a-vis others in the industry. And I think it just shows you how much public power will step up when we need to. Also here at APPA, we develop platforms for discussion and learning on a range of topics, including things like human resources response and financial implications of COVID-19 so that our members can discuss those issues with each other. we've had webinars related to these issues where our members can speak to what they've been doing on the ground in addressing some of these key factors. We've also engaged with the media. We've had an op-ed placed in Real Clear Energy around the essential nature of utility workers. We provided you all a sample op-ed so that you could try to get that placed in your local newspapers and media. We also, importantly, created a video thanking essential public power workers, which we've shared with you all for you to share elsewhere as well. And I appreciate that work so much, and we appreciate their work, and hopefully that video says it all. On the legislative advocacy front, we have really focused a lot of efforts here in this space. We understand that the pandemic has somewhat uneven implications for some of our members, but we know that everyone is affected financially by the pandemic, whether because of potential bad debt in the future for the inability to collect on utility bills, or because just of load losses. And it really does depend on where you are in terms of those impacts. So we recognize that, and in our advocacy efforts, we have been emphasizing those slight differences in terms of the impacts to our members, but that there are impacts. And we have focused in on a forgivable loan concept that would help our members who need the most help in this pandemic response, especially as we get further along in the year and even going into 2021. So that is our top legislative priority right now in the next COVID-19 package, which is being developed this month and next. And the team led by Desmarie Waterhouse has been working hard on that. But in addition, we have been able to help secure additional low-income home energy assistance program funds. We've also helped modify the Paycheck Protection Act so that more of the funds given to small businesses as they recover from the pandemic, more of that money can now be used to pay utility bills. We have also been looking at tax-exempt financing and other tools to improve upon. Of course, we have tax-exempt financing, but there are other areas that we want to emphasize in terms of making tax-exempt financing more flexible for us, especially as we respond to the pandemic. And I'll talk about those specifics in a bit. Beyond our responses to both current and past crises, we've also long in our history focused on programs that are critical to public power. At our founding and now, we've come together to make sure policymakers understand the importance of the Power Marketing Administrations and the Tennessee Valley Authority in providing cost-based, affordable, and clean hydropower. Clean renewable hydropower from the Federal Power Marketing Program must be maintained, and will continue to oppose proposals to sell off the Power Marketing Administrations or in any way erode their ability to provide this low cost and reliable, affordable, and clean service. Partnering with rural electric cooperatives, Public Power has a huge amount of strength when we push back on these misguided proposals, and they've again crept up in 2020, but we've been pushing back, I think, in a needed way. While the U.S. looks to revive the economy, we also want to be sure Public Power is able to fully take advantage of tax-based incentives to build necessary infrastructure for our future electric needs, as I was mentioning earlier. Public Power was able to retain tax-exempt financing in the Tax Act in 2017, but there's more work to be done. We want to reestablish the advance refunding mechanism. I think of that as like how we can refinance our house. We should be able to do that with our bonds. We also need to modernize private use rules and increase the small issuer exemption, and that will really help spur economic activity in our sector. We also continue to support and need comparable incentives for clean energy production, and that's still a key ask of the federal government kind of post-COVID-19 activities. And then also on the clean energy front, we're seeing more interest in pushing electric vehicles from a policy standpoint and making grants available to Public Power as well as to owners and purchasers of electric vehicles. As some of the legislative priorities indicate that I have just been discussing, we're now dealing with a much more complex industry than the one our new members had 80 years ago. From the drumbeat of rules and regulations affecting our work to the complexity of the wholesale electricity markets, cyber risk management and marrying digital technology with grid operations, and the integration of intermittent renewables and associated technology to enable that integration. All of these things have added to the complexity of producing and delivering energy. And I only just hit on a few. There's a lot more complexity that it can take me an hour to talk about. There's also heightened concern about resilience and security. And that's, and customer privacy is actually juxtaposed with the democratization of energy and electricity use and the need for more information. So we have some pushes and pulls in our industry as well. So a strong federal and industry grid resilience partnership is important, as we talked about already several times. This has really shown up in the COVID-19 response. The industry proactively sought out partnership with the federal government in the area of cybersecurity management, because we don't know everything in the cybersecurity arena. It's really a national security issue, and we needed that partnership, and then they needed us as critical infrastructure providers. APPA partnered with EEI and NRECA and other industry groups to ensure that the industry was coming to the table together around these important topics. Also, I'll highlight on another major issue that we are continuing to grapple with, and I do think we'll come back to, the climate change resolution that we adopted earlier this year at the APPA Legislative and Resolutions Committee will help to guide our discussions on this important topic. And as I said, it's been delayed by COVID-19, but I do believe it will be reinvigorated at some point. And I think we've seen some draft legislation that should be introduced soon in that vein. Again, I don't expect any serious activity on climate change legislation in the short term, but we do need to have the dialogue around these issues now. And we appreciate the continued dialogue with our membership on this important issue that really does affect different people differently across the country and different utilities. So while the industry is becoming increasingly complex, such complexity can be addressed optimally by public power utilities. We are close to our customers, we're flexible in governance and rate design and rate making, and we're aligned to community needs. For 80 years, we've also had a forum to share ideas, successes, failures, and innovations with each other throughout the country. The public power community itself is powerful. Facilitated by APPA via mutual advocacy efforts, engineering services, online and in-person training, knowledge sharing and networking, what we cannot do alone, we can achieve with this community. We can also provide a moral compass to an industry that truly needs one. As we move forward to address the needs of our communities as they recover from the economic impacts of COVID-19, difficult decisions may need to be made about maintaining operational integrity and best managing our resources. But we will make them with our communities at the forefront of our decision making. As we evolve to meet the desire of some of our customers to have more control of their electricity consumption and production, public power will lead the way, because our customers and communities matter most. As APPA continues to advocate in DC on your behalf, we will do so with the knowledge that we are representing public power utilities. You are providing essential electric service to your communities day in and day out, reliably and affordably on a not-for-profit basis. You are connected to your communities and to each other through APPA. Our founding bylaws state that our purpose is to, quote, promote cooperation among and the betterment of municipal corporations, state agencies, and political subdivisions, and to educate and assist the public power sector of the electric utility industry with particular regard to management and operation, engineering, design, construction, operation and research, accounting and commercial practice, public policy, personnel training, and such other matters as may be common to public power systems. Creating this community of cooperating public power utilities across the country is what we were founded to do 80 years ago, and what we will keep doing for you into the future. As we've all recently reconsidered and reflected on what it means to come together and how we stay connected, even as we are not in the same physical space, our shared community is more important than ever. We are stronger because we are networked together. These connections, our community, is not just in our own communities, but in the public power communities throughout the country. This connection has made us resilient. This connection will enable us to meet current and future challenges to the benefit of the communities we serve. And I look forward to working with you to meet those challenges.